one could call him, I suppose, Paul O Sullivan, to tell us more about his private life as an investigator. I can't call you a top cop because you're the one who brings the top cops down. It's good to have you.
Some of them.
Some of them?
Yes.
Yeah. And you lead one could call a very dangerous life if one has to talk about hit lists and criminals and everybody wanting your head. How do you survive every day?
Well, I believe in God.
Yeah.
And I believe that what's going to happen is going to happen. I have work to do, and I just get on with it.
Yeah.
I don't worry about my safety as much as perhaps some would think I do, although I do take the necessary precautions. But I am trained, obviously, in avoiding situations that might be confrontational.
Some people might call you an adrenaline junkie. Other people might just call you somebody who really has a quest for justice and wants to see that the wrongs are made right. Is that one way of calling you?
You know, somebody asked me, how did you become like this? And the only thing I can think back to was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I came from a very large Irish Catholic family, and I got blamed for something I didn't do. And I got punished for it. And in those days, when you got punished, you got a hiding. And I just remember thinking afterwards, I will never get blamed for something I didn't do again. And I found a way of making sure that the blame was apportioned correctly amongst my siblings. And thereafter, I just made it a passion of mine to make sure that when people did something wrong, that they were held accountable for it. And I think I've always done so without fear or favor.
Yeah. A lot of people look at, I suppose, particularly cases that you investigate and you deal with. A lot of people say that South Africa is almost turning into a haven for the underworld. Is it fair to say that, or does this exist everywhere?
I think the underworld is in all parts of the world, and it's very easy. We become isolated like an island, and we think that these problems only occur in South Africa. In my opinion, what has happened in South Africa is the transnational organized criminals have exploited some of the weaknesses in the system. And that would include, for example, our weak border controls. The ability to buy a South African passport. The government spend enormous sums of money on having counterfeit-proof passports. But what they didn't do is they didn't deal with the situation that a person can go through the back door with fake documents and obtain a real South African passport in a fake name. So it hasn't solved the problem.
Yeah. You're actually working on quite an interesting case now against Tracker and some very high-level ranking police officers just saying that they are unfairly using police resources, that the company Tracker. I mean, again, this must be quite a big case for you to put your neck on the line to do.
Well, I imagine I'm going to come in for some criticism.
Most definitely.
But before I opened the case, I took a decision that it was necessary to do so. Now, this company started trading in 1996, and it got a springboard into operation because it was able to equip the startup costs of its business were passed over onto the South African Police Service, which means the paying public. And I think not only did that give them an unfair advantage to all the competitors out there, and there were already 2 competitors up and running at that stage, but it gave them an edge because they were not having to pick up a vast proportion of the costs in relation to the tracking of the motor vehicles.
Yeah.
And if you look at their website, they claim to have arrested so many criminals, but it was actually the police that arrested those criminals. And they claim to have recovered so many cars, but it was actually the police that recovered those cars. And the customers of Tracker, some of them paying hundreds of rands a month because they've been there so long, and they've been escalated each year, have never actually understood that they are paying for the police to recover their motor vehicles.
Yeah,
now, I think where things started going off the rails was when Tracker decided to incentivize the police. So the more vehicles you recover, the more likely you are to be in line for the annual award, which is an overseas trip.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Paul Sullivan, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, just to stay on a little bit longer. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we'll continue our conversation, but that unfortunately will be on Channel 404. But let's take a break. But one thing I do need to say is that Tracker unfortunately declined our offer to come into studio to give their comment regarding these allegations. So I think it's important that we do get that out. Let's take a break.